Everything was working. No alarm, no crisis, no sense of urgency. The money came in, the bills were paid, and the routine continued smoothly. From the outside, it looked like control. Inside, there was only silence. In this true story, told in the first person, I'm not going to talk about a big mistake nor an impulsive decision. I'm going to talk about something far more dangerous. A small, comfortable, and silent choice. One of those that seem harmless, that gradually destroyed my financial control without me even realizing it. There wasn't one specific day when everything fell apart. There were several days when I stopped looking, and that's where it all began. This is not a story about wealth, not even about sudden bankruptcy. It's about false stability, ignored habits, and the moment when silence takes its toll. If you've ever felt like everything was under control, stay until the end. The night it all began was silent. There was no siren, no warning, and no visible crash. It was just a small, almost elegant decision, a silent choice made automatically. And I remember the exact moment I thought, okay, because I still had money, a routine, and the appearance of being in control. I had no idea what that calmness was buying. Back then, my life seemed well organized. I paid the bills, kept to the schedule, and answered messages. I didn't live in luxury, but I lived without fear. I had the comfortable feeling of always being one step ahead. I looked to the future as one looks down a lit hallway. And yet, there was a hidden detail in the corner. Something so subtle that I called it normal. I had a specific way of dealing with money. It wasn't planning. It was a kind of blind trust. I repeated habits and called it discipline. I avoided overthinking so as not to waste energy. I kept telling myself, I know my life, I can handle it. And that phrase gave me peace, as if it were true. But it was just a mild, daily anesthetic. What I didn't see was the false stability forming. Everything was working, so I believed that everything was all right. When one month was good, I would relax the next. When something was too tight, I would push it and then compensate later. I lived in this improvised yet silent balance. And silence, when it seems safe, becomes a refuge, until it becomes a trap without changing its tone. There were signs, but I didn't call them signs. I used to call it a phase, a rush, or a temporary situation. A bill that I used to put off until the next day. An expense that I justified because I deserved to breathe. A reminder that I would close without reading to the end. I wasn't irresponsible. I was just intentionally distracted. I chose not to look so as not to feel uncomfortable. And then came that silent decision, the one who seemed intelligent, practical, and harmless. I remember thinking it was just a convenience. It was simply a way to keep everything flowing. I signed, accepted, and confirmed without hesitation. There was no drama, just a click and quick relief, as if I had solved a problem that wasn't even a problem. That first night, I slept peacefully. The world hadn't changed. My room was the same. I still had my plans, my roots, and my answers. I was still the person who seemed to know what I was doing. But inside, a gear started to slip. And the worst part is that I didn't hear the sound of it, because a fall, when it is silent, seems like nothing more than rest. In the following days, nothing moved. The routine continued steadily, almost comfortably. Wake up, work, pay, repeat. It was all too predictable to be frightening. I called that stability. Firm ground beneath your feet. At least that's what it seemed like. The money was still coming in. The account still balanced. Commitments were still being fulfilled. I felt like an adult, responsible, in control. When someone complained about being cramped, I could hear them from a distance. That wasn't happening to me, I thought. I had organized my life. Comfort creates a false sense of courage. It makes us walk without looking at the ground. I trusted my gut feeling more than the facts. I trusted the past, not the present. If it worked before, it will work again. This phrase has become an unspoken rule, and I never questioned her. Minor excesses began to repeat themselves. Nothing scandalous, nothing obvious. Only choices that seemed harmless. A tweak here, another there, always with an elegant justification. I didn't call it a mistake. He called it flexibility. When things got tough, I would make up for it later. When I had some free time, I would relax beforehand. It was a game of pushing decisions aside, always believing that I would have time. Tomorrow seemed patient, and I abused that patience, without realizing the cost of it. There was a strange reliance on the automatic, as if everything would resolve itself. I didn't revise, I didn't check, I didn't stop. I just kept going. The sensation was one of fluidity, but fluidity is not control. I would only find that out later. At night, I didn't lose sleep. There was no anxiety, nor guilt. I slept with a clear mind, believing that he was doing enough. The silence reinforced this idea. If nothing hurts, nothing is wrong. At least that's what I kept repeating. Looking back now, everything is clearer. But at that stage, nothing seemed urgent. The danger didn't shout, it whispered, and I confused whispering with safety. That's how false stability took hold. No confrontation, no clash, no warning, just taking up space, day after day. The error did not appear as an error. He presented himself as a practical solution. Something simple, quick, almost clever. I thought I was making my life easier, that he was gaining time and peace of mind. There was no fear at that moment. There was relief, and that fooled me. It was a small habit repeated without thought, a choice always made in the same way. I didn't stop to assess the impact, because the impact didn't come immediately. He hid behind normalcy, and everything that seems normal goes unnoticed, including what is wrong. I kept telling myself it was temporary. I would adjust that next month, then I would put everything in order. These promises were made without hesitation. They had no date, nor any real commitment, and that's precisely why they seemed harmless. I believed them without question. The habit grew quietly. It's become part of the routine, like brushing your teeth. I didn't even notice anymore when I repeated it. It was automatic, almost comfortable, and the more automatic it became, the less I reflected. Thinking was hard work. Ignoring it seemed efficient. Sometimes a strange feeling would arise, a quick, almost imperceptible doubt. Something inside told me that this deserved attention, but I pushed the thought away. I didn't want to complicate what seemed simple. I didn't want to spoil the feeling of control, so I moved on. The problem with invisible error is this: it doesn't cause immediate pain. He doesn't interrupt the routine. It just accumulates in silence, like dust that no one cleans, until the day the air becomes heavy and breathing starts to become uncomfortable. I kept saying that everything was fine. I kept repeating that to myself. I didn't even bring up the subject with the others. There was no reason, I thought. Nothing was out of place. But inside, something had already changed, even though I didn't know how to explain it. Today, I know that's where it happened. In that small, constant habit. In that decision, I treated it as a detail. That's when control began to slip. No noise, no warnings, no drama. And the more I ignored it, the deeper it went. But back then, I still felt safe. Over time, something began to weigh on me. It wasn't a clear problem. It was more of a diffuse feeling of tightness, as if the air were a little denser. I was still operational. I was still delivering. But the effort grew in silence, and I pretended not to notice. The bills started arriving faster. Or maybe I've just started looking less. I was responding automatically. He paid what he could and pushed the rest aside, always with an explanation ready, always believing that he was in control. Even when the control was already failing, I started justifying everything. For myself primarily. I used to say it was just a phase. Everyone goes through this. All that was needed was to hold on a little longer. These phrases have become a shield, and also prison. Whenever someone brought up planning, I would change the subject. I didn't want to hear anything that would break my narrative. To listen would be to admit, and admitting it seemed dangerous. So I avoided deep conversations. I preferred the superficial, where nobody asked questions. The money started slipping away in the corners. Not all at once, but gradually, like water in a cracked container. I couldn't see the crack. I only noticed that there was less left over, and he blamed the world. Never my choices. The pressure didn't come as panic, it came as exhaustion. A constant tiredness, difficult to explain. I was sleeping, but I wasn't resting. I was thinking about numbers unintentionally, and yet he said that everything was fine, as if repeating oneself were enough. Denial has become a strategy. While I denied it, nothing officially changed. If I didn't name the problem, it wouldn't exist. That's how I thought. And that thought kept me moving, even in the wrong direction, even with no visible way out. Today I understand this period as a transition. It wasn't a collapse yet. That was the way to him. But at the time I thought it was just tiredness, something that would pass with rest. I didn't know that control was already slipping away, and that I was helping with that day after day. The collapse didn't happen with an explosion. He arrived on an ordinary morning. I opened the account expecting the usual, and I saw a number that didn't make sense. It wasn't zero, but it wasn't enough either. My body reacted before my mind. A quick chill ran through my chest. I tried to recalculate mentally. I checked dates, reminders, old promises. Everything seemed right, and yet, wrong. The sum didn't add up like it used to. The room to maneuver had vanished. For the first time, I felt real fear, a quiet but profound fear. The consequences began to appear, not as chaos, but as limitations. Simple choices have become difficult. Small delays turned into major inconveniences. I started avoiding certain decisions. Each choice seemed to cost more, and I no longer had any room to maneuver. Shame came right after fear. Not public shame, but internal shame. The kind that prevents you from even asking for help. I isolated myself without realizing it. I replied to fewer messages. I talked less about my life. Silence became a hiding place. I mentally relived the last few months. I was trying to find the exact moment of the fall, but everything was too continuous. There wasn't a single glaring error, just a series of silent choices. This made everything heavier, because there was no clear villain. Money is no longer just a tool. It became a constant source of tension. I was thinking about that when I woke up. I thought about that before going to sleep. Each notification caused apprehension. Each bill felt like a trial, and I felt exposed. Even so, I still pretended everything was normal. She would go out, work, and talk. From the outside, nothing had changed. Inside, everything was cramped. I carried the collapse along in silence. I don't know how to explain it, not knowing where to begin. That was my emotional and financial breakdown. No show, no audience, only a guilty conscience creeping in. The certainty that something had broken, not in the bank, but in me. The control I swore I had, it no longer existed. Rock bottom wasn't dramatic. No bankruptcy was declared. No one knocked on the door. It was just a heavier silence. One day after another, without any reaction, I did the bare minimum, and he called that survival. I stopped sharing how I felt, not because someone forbade me from doing so, but that's because I didn't know how to explain it. How can you tell a story that doesn't have scenes? How can I ask for help without seeming weak? So I kept quiet, and isolation became routine. Shame began to guide decisions. I avoided casual encounters. He declined invitations with vague excuses. I didn't want to spend money, nor did I want to explain. I would walk away before being questioned. Solitude seemed safer, even though it hurts more. There were days when I just observed. Time is passing by without me keeping track. I felt like I was falling behind in my own life, as if everyone had moved on. And what if I had stayed behind? No map, no plan. Without the courage to look ahead, I judged myself in silence. Each past mistake returned, magnified. I wondered how I got there. How could someone so attentive get so lost? These questions had no answer, just weight and accumulated fatigue. Rock bottom has a slow pace. Nothing changes suddenly. Hope doesn't disappear all at once. She's growing distant, like a sound in another room. You know it exists, but it can't reach any further. Even so, something resisted. It was neither strength nor optimism. It was just the instinct to keep going. Get up, fulfill your duties, return. I saw no way out, but he didn't give up either. I just endured it. Today I know that there was a pause there, not a solution, but a silent limit. The point at which denial became impossible. The point at which exhaustion overcame pride. And even without knowing it, I began to accept what happened. Consciousness did not arrive as a revelation. It arrived as a profound weariness. I no longer had the energy to pretend, not even to support the old version of myself. That's when I stopped arguing with the facts, not to solve it, just to acknowledge it. Something was out of place. I started looking back more honestly, without trying to defend myself mentally. No need to make quick excuses. I saw patterns that I had previously ignored. I've seen far too many repeated decisions. I saw silence where there should have been attention, and I saw fear disguised as tranquility. Accepting it wasn't about blaming yourself. It wasn't an immediate act of forgiving either. It was simply a matter of stopping running away. Stop saying it was bad luck. Stop blaming the weather or the world. I acknowledged my part, even if it hurt. There was a specific moment of clarity, not a memorable scene, but a simple yet weighty thought. I didn't suddenly lose control. I gradually let go of him, in exchange for momentary comfort, in exchange for not having to look. This awareness did not bring immediate relief. She brought weight, because now I knew, and knowledge prevents denial, but it also prevents blind repetition. It was uncomfortable, and at the same time, necessary. I began to observe my own movements, without correcting it yet, without promising change, just observing, like someone watching their own story unfold from the outside, with less judgment and more clarity. Accepting meant understanding my limitations, understanding that control is not certainty, not even permanent stability. Control is presence, and I had been away for a long time, not from work, but from myself. That was the real beginning of the turnaround, not a solution, not a defined plan, but let's be honest, where I stopped pretending to be strong, and I began to see reality, even without knowing what the next step is yet. The restart didn't begin with enthusiasm. It started with small, discrete steps. No spectacular comebacks. No promises for the future. Just simple decisions made with presence. I stopped chasing shortcuts, and I began to observe every movement. I didn't try to recover what I lost. I tried to stop losing so much. This completely changed the pace. I stopped thinking about growing up. I started thinking about how to support myself. Every choice had to fit within reality, and no longer in hope. Control returned in a different form, not as a feeling of power, but with constant attention. I started observing before acting, check before trusting, without paranoia, without rigidity, only with awareness. There were difficult days in this process, days when nothing seemed to be progressing, days when the past came back to mind, but I wasn't trying to erase it. I let it go, because fleeing had already cost him dearly, and I didn't want to repeat it. The focus is no longer on money. It became clear. Clarity about boundaries, clarity about choices, clarity about what I could support, without comparison to anyone. No rush to prove anything. I learned to respect time, not the market's timing, but internal time. It's time to regain confidence, to align actions with reality, to accept a slower pace. And it's more true. None of this was inspiring at first glance. It was simple, almost boring, but it was solid. Unlike the comfort of the past, it seemed light, but it was fragile. Now everything had real weight, and that gave me solid ground to stand on. This fresh start didn't make me rich. It didn't surprise me, but it gave me back something essential, the feeling of being present, to know where I'm stepping, to know why I choose this, and to no longer hide from myself. Today, when I think about all of this, I don't feel proud. I don't feel ashamed like I used to either. I feel respect for the history I have lived through, because she taught me without yelling. It showed me that the real danger isn't the fall. It's the false sense that we'll never fall, while we stop paying attention. I learned that control is not overconfidence. It's not a perfect routine, nor is it a full account. Control is a daily presence. It's about knowing what's happening now, not what happened in the past, nor do I know what I expect to happen next. It's about being attentive even when everything seems normal. The decision that brought me down wasn't absurd. It was too comfortable. It was too quiet. And that's why it went unnoticed. Today I understand that dangerous choices, they rarely come across as a problem. They come with a relieved look on their faces. If this story has stayed with me, it wasn't the collapse itself. It was because of the way he was born. Slow, discreet, polite, without asking permission, without making a sound, until it's all occupied. I'm not telling this to warn anyone, not even to teach the right way. I'm telling this story because it's human nature, because it happens when we let our guard down, when we rely more on our feelings more so than in reality, which is what changes, even when it seems stable. Today I walk with less haste, not because I learned everything, but because I learned to observe. I know that control can slip away, and I know it just depends on constant attention, not through talent, nor through luck, but with an honest presence. If there is a silent lesson in all of this, the thing is, comfort can be deceiving. And silence too. Not every fall gives you a warning. Some things just happen when we stop looking, and he believes too much that he is safe. This story doesn't end with victory. It ends with awareness. And for me, that was enough, because now I know where I'm stepping. And I know that control is not a promise, it's a daily choice, even when nobody is looking. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't change that specific decision. I would change the way I was absent, because the mistake wasn't choosing wrong once. It was a matter of choosing without being present many times. It was a matter of delegating control to automation, and to call that tranquility. This story taught me something simple. Nothing remains under control on its own. Neither money, nor routine, nor life. Everything requires constant attention, even when it seems stable. Especially when it seems stable, because that's where we relax the most. I learned that silence is not neutral. It can be restful, but it could also be a warning. It depends on how we listen. I confused absence of pain with safety, and that cost me dearly, not only financially but internally as well. Today I no longer seek a sense of control. I seek consistency between what I do and how I live, between what comes in and what goes out, between what I avoid and what I face. This does not eliminate risks, but it keeps me awake, and that makes all the difference. I still know that I could make the same mistake again. This awareness doesn't paralyze me. She keeps me on my toes. I don't need absolute guarantees. I need sufficient presence to notice when something changes, before things change too much. If you've heard this story this far, maybe it's not about the money. Perhaps it's because of the silence she describes. This silence that feels so comfortable, but that hides accumulated choices. They only show up when it's too late, or almost too late. This is not a story of quick overcoming. It's a story of regained attention, of reconstructed consciousness, from a more humble control, less based on certainty, more based on observation, and in silent responsibility. I keep walking, without promising perfect endings, but without fooling myself with shortcuts, because now I know. The real collapse doesn't start with the account. It begins when we stop looking and confuses silence with security.